Hello, Tribesters and our extended tribe. Welcome to Conscious Leaders, our series with leaders and their advisors about the world of work and how it's changing. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Lucy Harris. Lucy has been a headhunter for over 25 years and is the founding partner of Altrua, an agency built on a passion for working around organizational health and purpose. More conscious leader than most, Lucy has been at the cutting edge of C-suite engagement, and few can be better off giving us a little bit of navigation around what's happening with leadership today and how it's evolved. For Lucy and Altrua, understanding purpose is key to delivering visions and results, always people, not profit driven. Lucy, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Let's start off just about your early career and how you got to where you are now. So can you give us a little bit of insight on your journey?
Yes, of course. I didn't plan on being a headhunter. I'm not sure many do. I have a creative degree and I grew up internationally with my father being in the British forces. So we lived all around the world. My passion was to work in the fashion industry, unquestionably. And I actually trained as a buyer and started life working for Harrods. So I did train and got to the level of buyer before being interested actually by more than one business as opposed to operating just within one company. And it was at that point that I engaged with a headhunter. And they offered me a slot to cross the table and sit on the other side of what was then a very large television screen shaped computer with a pile of physical CVs. And I thought that would be a great place to sit and have a watchful brief while I found myself another buying role. And the truth is I found myself fascinated by the movement of talent, industries, multiple businesses, and stayed. And far too many years later, I'm here.
What an interesting start. And it's so interesting how those, like, that one moment can change everything from based on where you thought you'd go, and then all of a sudden it evolves into something else. How has recruitment and headhunting changed over your extensive career?
Well, actually, the two are separate, but my early years in the industry saw me grow up in recruiting. So recruiting is more of a mass market, tends to be more mid-management level. And I have taken a different route to some search partners in that I've grown up with my candidate base. So there are plenty of examples of me having hired leaders 2 or 3 times at least through their career. So I've grown up with them, which has been a nice approach. And there are deep-rooted relationships on both sides of the table there. Search is a technical, difficult process that used to be a case of fishing in a pool, and hopefully you hooked the right fish. In layman's terms, it is now highly analytical, data-driven, protected by ruling around GDPR, enabled by fantastic social platforms and social media sharing a lot of information on talent. So it doesn't make it any easier, however, to have those meaningful relationships. You have to earn the relationship of a candidate in order to have a conversation with them about a great brief. And the same is true the other way around. You earn the relationship and operate as an ambassador for your client in order to hire the right talent and attract the right individuals to a conversation. So it is much more complicated than it ever was.
Interesting. And how, in your view, how has leadership changed since you started out? Are you seeing big shifts in how, the leaders 20 years ago headed up a company versus how they manage and lead teams now?
It was far more functional. I think, 25 plus years ago, certainly in the retail and consumer industry, you had the functional experts, the operator, the buyer, the merchandiser, the creative director, the finance director, and they tended to grow up through what I call the sort of T-bar, which is up through one function, and then they plateaued to become a leader at a managing director, regardless of the function they'd come up through. And in 2008, 2009, during the big financial crash, there was a need for really every leader in a business to be a lot more accountable and operationally affect change coming out of that crisis moment. So you saw the loss of actually managing director titles, and you had far more emergence of chief operating officers who had potentially finance as well as operations, supply chain. So coming up and out of the T-bar, you ended up with almost pieces of cake, which is a sort of a V-shaped role with much more accountability across the business for delivering not just the strategy and the leadership. And I would say that's evolved even further in the last sort of 10, 15 years. And leaders right at the top of the tree have meandered through different functions in a business, so that they're cross-functional. By the time they get to chief executive level, they hopefully have operated and led in a majority of the functions which they're going to be the ultimate leader for. So it's a matrix. We are operating now in a matrix, and the work we do to help structure teams and talent below a chief executive involves each of those accountable C-suite players to be involved in a multiple of functional areas working together. So there are, the questions around who owns what are the wrong questions to ask. It's how do we achieve our goal through a joint effort.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting, and I want to pick into that a little bit. So in the past, you would have been searching for specific criteria on a role and what was needed, and now you specifically in your agency look at a different set of criteria. Can you just talk about that a little bit more in detail?
Yes. So as a search firm, we don't set the criteria. We are very clear on our critical path. So on what information needs to be extracted at what point and built into what form of brief. But the criteria for the hire equally shouldn't be given to us by a client. So there is a totally different engaging conversation that talks about the reason for the hire. And there's a systemic set of questions and qualification in understanding of what's the mission. Yeah, that's a bigger question. What's the mission? How are you going to achieve it? What KPIs will you use to measure? And therefore, what is it? What is the search objective? So that's different. And I think that where search can not have a positive outcome is where a prescription, if you like, is given from either the search firm to the client based on what they feel is right for the business, without the authority to do so, or whether the brief is taken from the client to the headhunter without any proper understanding, getting under the bonnet of a business. So we are renowned for getting under the bonnet of a business, understanding how the bits connect. I came from the industry. Search is a secondary career. So it is really important to understand what the strategy is, what the end goal is, and what the purpose is. So there are three questions perhaps to bring in at this point. Whenever we work with a leader, whenever we work with a business, we will ask three clear questions. And those are why you exist, why do you exist, what difference you make, and why is it the way you do things why does that resonate with both your audiences internally, your employees, and your audiences externally, your consumers, whatever the model. So why do you exist? What difference do you make? And why does the way you do it engage on both sides of the fence? And they're very clear, simple questions, but that to us depicts purpose.
And those businesses that you're working with, obviously they're coming to you because you're deeply rooted in purpose, and you want to be placing people that have their own purpose, but are also committed to their company's purpose. Mm-hmm. How did you come up with that idea? What was driving you to work towards a business recruiting people with purpose?
Yes, I'm smiling.
I know you were a bit ahead of your time, because now people talk about people over profit, purpose-driven companies, but you started your business a little bit before people were necessarily considering that.
Yes, I think many would say we jumped on some sailing zeitgeist and carried the wave. I think we probably did, actually, without any intention of doing so. Altrua is a a derivative of altruism, and that's, you know, I called the business Altrua for a reason. And altruism to me is doing the right things, from which of course positive results come. So, but that has always been my MO throughout my career, is to do the right things, and I've never missed a number in my career. So I think that is very important. One of our values is a word that sounds Greek, arrête, but it's pronounced in a French way, and that literally translated means the value of doing things in the right way has more reward for us than any commercial currency, and that is really, really, really important to us. So Altrua was born really as a positive intention to disrupt what the metrics of search, through, I think, an allergy probably isn't too strong a word, an allergy to transactional search. So from a candidate point of view, I think there are a lot of very senior candidates who are not supported in that sort of personal coach, advisor experience through a search and through a dramatic career change. And equally, the client isn't given advice, isn't guided, there's no devil's advocate in the process to properly enable both sides. And personally, as an employee of a transactional search firm, many transactional search firms, they should all remain unnamed. That wasn't a positive experience necessarily permanently. So Altrua is about content, creativity, relationships, and when we get to it, exceptionally good process. So it's not that's not to compromise the search in any way, but there are things to us that matter more than just good transactional process.
You also talk about Thrival. Can you put this into context with relation to Altrua?
Yes. So for me, alchemy is around the right talent being in the right role with the right behavior. And all those three metrics should align to allow an individual and a business to reach that sort of utopian point of thrival and maintain it. So our mission is strength and leadership for a world that thrives. And that is really, really important to us. And that starts from within. And the three parts of the alchemy, if you like, a great talent in a great role is somebody being appointed into a good job. The positive, clear, culturally positive behavior is what will enable performance. And we call that thrival, and it's caught on. A lot of people talk to us about our thrival plan, and it's actually we've developed that into a tool that helps us qualify a business, a brief, and actually we use it right at the end of the process to work with both the informal referencing, the formal referencing, an assessment tool, and then we work with the client and the candidate to form that into an elaborated onboarding plan. It's much more than onboarding a thrival plan.